Oh, right. So these are-
Well, good evening and welcome members, officers and those members of the public here at the meeting and those joining us virtually. Item 1 on the agenda. Apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, we've got apologies from Councillor Pennington, Councillor Annie Brenton, Councillor David Brenton, Councillor Lavelle, Councillor Newton, Councillor Hawkins and Councillor Heffel.
Thank you. Item 2 is to consider the council minutes of the 31st of August 23, which are pages 5 and 13 on your agenda. I'll just run through them, starting with page 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. I'll propose them from the chair. Would someone like to second them? Councillor Locke. All in favour, please show. And against? And abstentions?
The chair, that's 24 for, 2 abstentions, and then Councillor Bright, so just the right, who can take part in voting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item 3 on the agenda is public contributions. It does say on your agenda pack there are no public contributions. We've had one late application which I've decided to allow. Mr. John Lewis, if you'd like to come forward, sir, and you come forward onto the microphone here so everyone can hear you.
It's all new.
Oh, well, we're on YouTube, you see. And you have your 3 minutes when you start speaking.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair, for letting us speak tonight. I appreciate it's actually been since before COVID I last spoke to council, so I wasn't aware that there had been a change in the way that we participate, so I hadn't submitted the sign up date. It's good to see some familiar faces from the days when I was an elected member of this council. It's really good to be here again. Thank you very much. I just want to very quickly speak to you all about residential parking permits and one other connected issue that happened when I recently contacted the council about a permit. Having recently moved to Torrington, I've inquired recently about a residential parking permit, only to be told that they work from Friday late to Monday morning. I must thank you all for standing up on a Thursday evening during COVID and clapping those of us that work at NHS. However, those of us that work at NHS who work night shifts during those wonderful times during COVID and still work night shifts, those permit hours of Friday to Monday morning don't work when I'm asleep on a Wednesday afternoon, going out on Wednesday night to try and save people's lives. I spoke to the council about this and was told that the only way I could do that is to either buy a season permit or a business permit, both of which are over £300 a year more expensive than a residential permit. I see that as a punishment for those who are residents who work non-traditional hours in what your own manager calls an old-fashioned and antiquated system of parking permits. In the process of speaking to your department, and this is the second point, when I spoke to the manager concerned, and I'm not going to mention him because he did correct his ways, but Councillor James, this is for you as the leader who holds a portfolio for customer service. It was quite apparent that this council, after all of the years of work that they made to trying to bring into line some of the small number of overzealous officers that the council used to have 12 years ago, into making the authority back into the hands of the elected members, is slowly starting to slide away. The manager concerned was quite rude and aggressive, and I asked him how the conversation had gone quite politely from flash to bang in just a few seconds. He apologised, and he actually then became quite pleasant to speak to. But he acknowledged his own behaviour and realised that he was being unnecessarily aggressive and changed. That needs to stop. I wasn't aggressive. I don't take abuse in the back of my ambulance from patients. I don't give abuse to members of your officers of the council or any other local authority. It's a professional two-way street, and I would like it to be the same. But the most point of all, really, with an underspend, and if I read the statement of accounts correct, an underspend of £800,000, if I read that correctly,
We have an understanding.
we have an underspend. Maybe we could look at the way that the resident permits are issued and the pricing of any other option for those of us that don't work the traditional 9 till 5 and work night shift, saving people's lives, so that we can park in the areas which we live. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I'm sure the relevant officer will look into that and make contact with you. Item 4, declarations of interest. Members with interest to declare should refer to the agenda item, describe the nature of their interest when the item is being discussed. Item 5 is agreement of agenda items between part 1 and 2. There are no part 2 items. Agenda item 6, consider correspondence or other business brought forward by the chair. I have none, and the chief executive has none. So moving on to item 7, an update of Torres Strait Council's carbon, environment and biodiversity plan, pages 14 to 74 on your agenda. Sean, are you going to do this or
It's Donna.
Donna? I'm not going to say your time starts now, so.
Good evening, councillors. Hopefully this is a fairly simple one. Hopefully you're all aware that we've signed the Devon Climate Emergency Declaration, that we have a target to be net zero carbon by 2030 as an organisation, and that we also wish Devon and our district to be in line with the net zero target 2050, which UK government has set. We have a carbon plan. We review it annually. Normally, the update would have been published in June, but because we've had elections and new committees and so on, we've not been able to do that. So the paper is just to say that I have updated the plan in line with what officers have asked for. It's gone to the Council of Climate Change Working Group, who had some comments to make. They have been taken on board and the plan's been further amended. So I'm really just asking Council to agree that we can publish this. It's not, it's only published on the internet. We don't do it as a paper document. So it's just, you know, can we put it out into the public domain? What I asked people.
Yes, Councillor, you had your hand up first.
Yeah, just a couple of small matters. Queries as much as anything. Page 29 of the report talks about what Forage has done and solar power on the roof of buildings, etc., and how much it's generated. It would be really useful if we could actually know how much we use, how much we generate versus how much we use. We're aiming for net zero, and that doesn't actually, as far as I can see, that doesn't give us that figure.
No, it's in the full carbon footprint report. So that's identified there. We could include it. We've had some problems just with the accounting because during COVID, EDF Energy wouldn't come out and validate our solar panel figures. So they're sort of right, but we've not had them quality assured for a while. So could I do that next year when I know that the figures are going to be accurate?
My other question is, I think it's a very important piece of work, and X-Links has potential to be a very important project for the country, but we're including it on page 2 as something that's happening. Yet the planning commission hasn't even been put in yet, and as far as I'm aware, the company are asking for it to be taken away from Torridge to be decided by the national government. Should we really be including a project that may or may not happen?
That was included specifically at Councillor Pennington's request, and he wanted it to go in the same section as our discussion on the Capital Clean Maritime Innovation Centre and the Levelling Up funds.
Just seems a bit odd to include something that is an aspiration, planning project that hasn't actually happened yet.
Councillor Haynes?
I think, yeah, the X-Links one was put in during our climate group consideration of the plan. I personally don't see any harm in putting it as a reference point. It may or may not happen, but it was something to go in with the Celtic Array reference, really. Yeah, I'd just like to commend this plan to council. Donna and Cindy has done a huge amount of work on it. It's laid the foundations in terms of carbon audits of our properties and our transport and everything. But I would like to urge councillors to go the next step. We've got this basic material to work on. Now we need to hasten the assessment of our properties, which has been done by the estates manager. And we need to, as soon as possible, prioritise buildings owned by Torridge to incorporate energy saving measures, carbon emission measures. This makes sense economically as well as in terms of the climate. This is the next step. We need to put money towards this. We need to look at all possible grant sources. We need to treat this as a matter of urgency and play our part. And we need to look at our transport systems and urgently look at opportunities to go electric and to reduce emissions in that area. So I'll leave that with councillors, and I hope when we come to the budget, setting that, so we consider allocating far more resources to energy reduction, carbon reduction. And I would like to recommend or propose that councillors vote and recommend this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. I believe, yeah, sorry, lady behind you, Councillor Dodd, yes, you had your hand up. Fractionally quicker.
I agree completely with the councillor there, remarks about the excellence and the thinking that struck me, Donna, and I'm not knocking your report at all, I think it's brilliant, but frankly, I don't see how we can include something that we aren't in control of and actually could be counterproductive when it comes to us in terms of planning and could be construed as us having a sway one way or another. All right, if it's taken out of our hands, that's a different matter, but it's all unknown and it's not ours. We don't own it, so why is it in there?
As I said, that was included specifically. Councillor Pennington asked that climate change working group that section be added. So I guess if council decide tonight that they want it taken out, that's possible.
Yeah, I guess as similar to the previous project in the report, it could be just reworded as opportunities that could arise. So by simply adding a word or two as the Celtic Sea project, which is referred to on the page earlier in the report.
So, Councillor Dodd,
If you were inclined to do that, then I would vote for it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to vote with that in there.
okay,
I can offer an amendment. Entirely up to you, but if you use phrasing that it needs to it without being done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, I think if we go along words similar that the Chief Exec has just used, that seems to be, are you happy with that as well?
I'm very happy, just it could be rather than it will be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, that's fine.
Councillor Smith, you had your hand up?
I think, Chair, I was just going to say the same thing. I entirely agree with what Councillor Haynes was saying.
Okay.
I just thought that, and I would accept the amendment.
Well, you seconded that
Yes.
motion? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's been proposed by Councillor Haynes and seconded. Show of hands, all in support, please. Any against? And any abstentions?
That's 26, 4 and 2 against, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 8 on your agenda, council tax care leavers discount policy, pages 75 to 78. And I believe Stacey, she's already there. Stacey's going to present the report.
Thanks, Chair. So just by way of brief background, Devon County have approached Torridge and all the other Devon authorities in relation to providing assistance to care leavers to support them in their transition from the care system, and also to fulfill what's called the corporate parenting responsibility. So Devon County are asking that districts relieve care leavers from their liability to pay council tax up until the age of 25. So a care leaver is a person who has spent time living away from their family, either living with a foster family or in supported living or under any alternative arrangement arranged with their social worker. Generally, they leave the care system at the age of 18. So when a child enters the care system, the local authority has what's called the corporate parenting responsibility, which is a collective responsibility of the council and any partner agencies, effectively to provide the best possible parenting for the child and safeguard that child. So under section 13 of the Local Government Finance Act, district councils do have a discretion to reduce council tax liability that is payable by individuals. So at the moment, we've been given some data which is on the second page of the report from Devon County. They've said that Torridge district has approximately 58 care leavers within our district, but that's been checked by our records. And we currently have approximately 12 living in the Torridge district area. So if we were to implement this policy, for example, for the billing years 23-24, that reduction would cost Torridge a little over £8,000. Obviously, what we can't say is how much the cost would be going forward to us because we don't know the numbers. So what we're asking tonight is for members to agree this in principle, but with a full policy to come forward to full council with the full details, because there's still lots of different details that are being discussed amongst the county and with the other districts. And I know that our section 151 officers and the Revs and Bens managers are also on separate meetings. So that policy hasn't been agreed yet, but it has to be a consistent policy across Devon. So the proposal tonight is for members in principle to agree that we will provide the reduction for care leavers with a full policy and full detail to come forward at a later date for approval or not, as the case may be.
Thank you, Stacey. Well, you can see on page 77, your lead member, Councillor Simon Newton, fully supports this initiative. So I'll propose, Councillor?
Well, I was interested reading this through this afternoon that you could say, if you don't support it, what a mean person you are. But it's not that at all. I just thought 25 and you leave at 18 in care. Some leave before that, some can leave at 16 or 17. And the county council are the ones who are responsible for the aftercare of children, you say children, young adults then, who've been in care. They give them a finance package when they actually leave that care. So please, Stacey said there'll be a full proper policy. I'll support in principle it, but there are some questions around it, and I think Tracy's alluded to those. So when we see the full policies and how it affects, but you imagine in our district the number of 18-year-olds now, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds who leave home. There's an assumption they get supported by the parents, but they don't at all. So, you're setting up two different things. That person doesn't pay any council taxes till the age of 25, but that lady there, that chap there, you got to pay full council tax because he lives on his own in his own flat now, gets the 25% discount, but he pays the rest. So, I support in principle this. But again, in the back of my mind, the county council's pushing us to pick up some of this cost, I think. And it's down here as 8,000 currently on the 12, if it was implemented now, but it could be a lot more in the future.
Thank you. So this is an in principle agreement you're looking for.
Yeah, that's absolutely. It's in principle because of some of the details that Councillor Levers just raised needs to be discussed.
Okay, I'll propose from the chair then that we accept this policy.
Chair.
Second by, yeah. All in favour, please show. Thank you, Councillor Rowett.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Unanimous. So moving on to item 9 is the annual report on treasury management, pages 79 to 85 on your back. And over to Gordon.
Thank you, Chair. So there's 3 occasions in the financial year when treasury management is brought before the council. When the policy is set, each year, when we look at the revised budgets, and also at outturn. So this is the occasion when we report back to council on our compliance with the 22-23 treasury management policy. And the reason why it goes to full council is there are all sorts of inherent risks attached to the treasury management, which when all said and done is the management of cash. So it's the surplus cash that we lend to financial institutions, and it's the circumstances in which we will borrow from financial institutions. This is the occasion when we report back on our compliance with policy. So in February 2022, a policy was taken to the council that determines what our treasury management policies would be. So this explains who we would invest with and how much we would invest with and where they would be domiciled. Well, I'm happy to report that we've complied with the policy for that year, and the report details, the initial part of the report details compliance with that policy and also provides some background into the management of cash in year. So you'll all be aware that there were some large increases in interest rates in the year, and as a consequence, we achieved much more in interest, which has been really helpful and which helped to generate that underspend. And it's also, of course, the fact that there will be an impact in the current year as well, with interest rates increasing further and cash balances being at over £20 million. The appendix also details the other key point of this report is to detail our compliance with prudential indicators. So the prudential indicators indicate the circumstances in which capital investment decisions are made. So it determines the prudence, the affordability, and the sustainability of those decisions. And it often refers to the circumstances in which we will borrow. Well, I'm again pleased to report that we complied with policies last year. One thing that will jump out is that we were quite significantly under those targets, and that's because built into the programme for 22-23 was borrowing for the new environment centre, which of course, as you all know, hasn't taken place yet. And so that's a key reason why our actuals are significantly less than what we budgeted or what we assumed we would be borrowing throughout the year. So thank you, Chair. Those are the key points I wanted to mention.
Yeah, thank you, Gordon. Gordon did mention the Environment Centre. Let's not know the Environment Centre. It has got a new title. Off the top of my head, it's the operations. Operational services.
Just operations.
Operations, right, okay, there you go. So, yeah, thank you very much for that, Gordon. Thank you. Yeah, so the recommendations, yes. So yeah, we note the Treasury Management Report on pages, sorry, for 22-23, and note the actual prudential indicators for 22-23. That's it, huh? I'll propose him as lead member for finance. I have had a meeting with Gordon some weeks back that went through this in quite a lot of detail. Please don't ask me what that detail was now. It is quite complicated, as you can imagine, but needless to say, I think we've got an excellent Section 151 officer in Gordon. He explained it to me very, very well. So I'll propose it from the chair. Have a seconder. Councillor James. All in favour, please, Sean?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you, Gordon, for that. Item 10 on your agenda, street naming and numbering policy, pages 86 to 108 on your pack. We've got Sean. Sean.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everybody. So the council has a statutory role as the street naming and numbering authority for district. Locally, we work to a set of rules and regulations that are set out in the locally approved policy. That the estates team administer that function for us, and the operation of applying postal addresses is run through our estates team. The policy that we currently have in place is now 15 years old and due a refresh. And so the team have taken a look and suggested some updates for you that have been summarised in the report in front of you. So I'll just run through a couple of them. Firstly, to amend the language of the policy to allow holiday lets to be addressed, they currently aren't. To impose new restrictions on publicity, announcing street names before it's been approved by Tourist District Council. That's a proposed change, and that comes as a result of some recent problems that we had in Torrington. To clarify the addressing criteria relating to planning permissions, and that's clarified in the amended report. To amend the restrictions on use of names of deceased persons to set out a defined time limit. We were just debating this before with Councillor Christie. That would go from 100 years down to 60 is the proposed time limit on that. To amend the procedures to ensure that addresses will only be allocated once construction has begun on the address site, and that's just a procedural thing for the team. It's much easier to run that way. Impose time restrictions on street name consultations, and again, it's a procedural matter to make it slicker for our customers and for us operationally to run as an organisation. To introduce formal requirements for digital site plans for development of 5 or more properties, and that's about adding things to the gazetteer. Again, it's a modernisation of processes, and to alter the written procedures and information to better reflect the actual processes. That's just about explanation. So as I've set out, or as it's been set out in the reports in front of you, this is all about modernising. We've done some consultation, street name and numbering officers done some consultation with other Devon authorities to make sure that we're in accordance with them. But it's a local policy that we recommend you to adopt tonight. Thank you, Jim.
I've got Councillor Christie, the first speaker, and then Councillor Donna.
Thank you. Yeah, I should really declare an interest in this because I've probably named most of the streets in Bideford for the last 35 years. And I've always tried to have a historical link, whether it be landowners, whether it be a name of the fields that were there before or whatever. I was slightly surprised. I've never heard this idea that you can only name streets after people who have passed on after 100 years. We're almost running out of mayors' names in Bideford. I've named them for I think we've used up the last 40 years worth of names. Nobody's ever queried it. And we even named one street after a living person. Admittedly, that was Clifford Coates, the most highly decorated armed forces member we ever had in Bideford. He was very touched by that, I should add. The one thing that does slightly worry me is the time scale of this. You're saying that parish councils have got 10 days. Now, some parish councils don't meet for months and months. And even on Bideford Town, we have our planning committee where we come up with the names. That only meets every 3 weeks. And I think 10 days is incredibly short because these things can be very contentious. I get approached quite often, people asking me, would you name a street after granddad and all this sort of thing. And some of the names, if the people who live in Westwood Home may know the very contentious issue over an ex-chairman of Northern UDC, Mrs. Hilda, which got very, very contentious. So I'd like that time limit extended if possible, because I'm not quite certain how you're going to get it within 10 days. As I say, I should declare an interest because at one time, I'm pretty sure there's going to be a Bushby Boulevard. Perhaps even a Christie Concourse, who knows? But I would ask that we have that 10 days. And could I'm not sure if he's still here, the naming officer. We do have a street naming officer. I understand that if we wanted to use the name of somebody who died within 60 years, that it's up to the parish's discretion to do that. And I would add that parishes, if you get developers come along to you and say, oh, we want this name, you can challenge them. And where developers have challenged Bideford Town Council, we've come back and we said, no, we are having that, and we've won. So you need to stick to your guns if you're in the parish council to get the name you want, not what some developer wants, because most developers' names are very generic and they're not very interesting at all. And they don't relate to the area you're naming. But I don't know if our street naming officer will come back and talk about.
So I can address those points
Oh, right,
if you like, yeah.
Certainly.
So like I mentioned earlier on, this is a locally approved policy, and so the time limits are there are set at your discretion. So if you wanted to reduce the 60 years to a lesser amount, that is possible. We were discussing this earlier on, and the reason the time limit was in there is because people and issues are contentious. We live in a political environment, and so it was felt that a sort of appropriate period of time to have elapsed before something was named after someone was there. In terms of whether names should have been allocated to people who were still alive or had passed away within the 100 years, that shouldn't have happened. And there have been a number of cases, obviously you've cited some, where things have slipped through the net. But there you go, we can, we're trying to tighten processes up and make sure, and again, these are your rules and regulations. If you'd like to suggest a change to that, that's up to you. And I can't remember the last point you were making. What was the last point about? Steve, the last bit. So you, Torres District Council is the street naming and numbering authority. Town council recommends to you what should be said. Set as the postal addresses, and then we apply the criteria of the policy against that. So again, it's your rules and regulations as district council as to which parish and developer recommendations come forward and are measured. So this is the document that set the rules that applications are measured against. So it's the district council, it's the naming authority, not the parish council. Timeline, again, that's up to you. For parishes, if you wanted to stretch that out, that was suggested because it's more operationally efficient for the district council and our officers in processing. It's better for the customer. If you'd like to suggest slightly longer, that's entirely at your discretion.
Yeah.
Well, yes, I would, because a lot of the rural parishes, I think it would be impossible to do it in 10 days. They might be away on a holiday or whatever. Could I extend that to a month at least? And also, could I lower the post-mortem naming period to 10 years? I'll put that as an amendment.
So, Chair, could I just check with the street naming number and officer? There's no regulations that are.
Chair, there is a regulation relating to the timeline where we have to name streets. It is 30 days from notification to us.
Yeah.
That's the reason for the short period of time for the consultation.
I think I heard that.
Sorry, could you just, we have 30 days from when the application was received to apply the address. So that's why it's limited to 10 days to make it easier for us to process. So I guess a short extension to that by a few days might help. We're not going to be able to go to a month because we wouldn't meet our own deadlines. That's pretty much it.
Can I come back and suggest that as soon as Porridge is told that 30 days of the month, you contact the parish clerk on that day and it runs from that day. It's a month, then.
Is that operationally possible?
Okay, you probably need a little bit of that. But for the very reasons that have been explained. I think they're all been explained.
Yes, John, can you?
Sorry, I couldn't hear.
Yeah. John, would you mind just coming up the front, just as I say, it's on YouTube, so I'm sure there's a lot of listeners that will hear every word that's said.
I think the point around practicality is just being picked up, so I think, it goes without saying that. Can you speak into the microphone? Sorry, it goes without saying that we want to be as efficient as possible. So I think that piece has been picked up in the conversations. Inevitably, and obviously, clearly, we're going to be consulting the parish councils as quickly as possible. So it's not necessarily something that is the reason we want to commit to doing so on the same day.
Into the mic, John.
I think as soon as reasonably practical, it's fine.
Okay, Councillor Dart, Councillor Craigie, you want to speak?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest the be extended to 21 days, which is 3 weeks, because that gives parishes enough time to call a meeting on it, but it also allows the district council a week to receive that response and do all the necessary.
There's an element at the start of that process and at the end. It might be a 10-day, 10-day, or it might be a 5-day, 20-day, 5-day. There are processes at either end of the parish's consideration.
Well, I can see where you're coming from, Sean and John. I'm still at a bit of a loss as to see what the urgency is, because, you know, when a developer is planning to build on a estate of 500 houses or whatever, you know, there's a very, very long lead into that process, way before the housing is actually completed, the roads put in, etc. Why can't the street naming aspect of that be taken far sooner? And why is it sort of condensed into that short period of time?
There's just a point of the priorities that are sitting on anyone's desk at a point in time. And I think it's just the practicality of which are that receiving information, processing it, making sure it's correct, getting it out in the right form. So which is why I suggest something around the logic of a 5-day period for it to be issued to parish councils, and then a consideration period at the end for processing at the end. So I think that was my 5 days, 20 days, 5 days, 15 days, 10 days, you know, there's some semantics in that. But I think it's that logical processing, the Torridge District Council at the beginning of that 30-day period, and the end of that 30-day period.
Well, I don't think I'm any further forward, but Councillor Leather.
Well, yeah, I can understand if it's from the application coming in and it's 30 days that you've got to give the response by. But I thought when I read it, 10 days is a short period, if it was 14 days, because by the time the town clerk gets that information, you've got to call a special meeting of the plans committee, because it's normally, as Councillor Christie said, if it is at Northern, that the plans committee is normally considered these requests for naming. I was interested to hear Councillor Christie say about the historic names, that it's always good to try and attach to these areas. I would just ask that where I used to live on Clovelly Road, almost opposite Asda, Morton Lodge, lived there for 38 years. How it ever became Adams Court, God only. Because I just do not know. Hartland Road Lodge was what, where I live, used its official name, Hartland Road Lodge. And the land all around there, not behind where the Forestry Commission was, but all that land was Hartland Road Plantation. If it had been called Plantation Court, I could understand it. But perhaps Councillor Christie tell me where Adams Court's come from.
Well, if you could do that very briefly. Yeah.
He's an ex-mayor.
Adam.
Right, so where are we with this? Is there going to be an amendment to the time or not? You're suggesting 10 days.
Yeah, that's our recommendation.
That's the
to you.
recommendation.
Our recommendation to you.
I would like longer than that. I mean, you've heard from all the councillors, you know, nobody said that is sufficient. I think we do need longer time.
Okay, I think the proposal that I maybe put out there was 20 days.
Well,
I mean,
as Councillor Brady said, 21, it's 3 weeks then.
Okay, 21 days, I think it was workable.
Thank you. Councillor James?
Yeah, I was just going to reinforce what Councillor Christie said.
Yeah.
We're consulting the community.
Yeah.
And not giving them time to actually do any consultation.
Okay, then. So thank you, Sean. So with that alteration and it's 21 days rather than 10 days, then I'll propose that we accept the report.
Sorry, I did suggest also reducing it to 10 years post-mortem.
Oh, yeah.
I think I'd only repeat what Phil had said, and there's probably a lot of people that have roads named after them in the country, which, you know, modern era would maybe reconsider how that was approached.
Oh, so long as we're not going down that route.
Judged by time.
Yes, people are judged by time.
Councillor Bright, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just touch on the naming post-mortem. Torrington Town Council were looking to name one street after the late Queen Elizabeth, which obviously is less than 10 years, so it makes it much more difficult to do that. And well, at the time it wasn't even flagged that it was been that 100 years, but still it wouldn't be eligible under this policy either. So we think it can.
So in terms of naming things after members of the royal family, there's a different set of rules and we have to write and get permission to do that anyway. And I as I understand it, that could be done within the period anyway, could it? Yeah, well, we'd have to. Yeah.
What do you suggest? What time?
Sorry, I have proposed 10 years, I haven't had a seconded, but I would propose it 10 years post-mortem. And I have to point out, you can always change street names. It was done in Bideford, in the 19th century, we had Cox Street. For some reason, Victorians took offence at that and they renamed it Hart Street. You can rename it anything you like.
Councillor Gow,
I would like to second Christie's 10 years down.
right, I didn't realise that this item was going to be the longest item on the agenda, but there we go. Councillor Rock,
Yeah, can you just confirm then, is it still in there that you can name a road after someone that is living still within the village?
That's not possible, no. And not
Well,
in
it
this
is
policy.
in Dalton and it's happening, though.
Yeah, as I said earlier on, Chair, I think there've been some previous occurrences that have slipped through the sort of
Moving
quality
forward.
checking, and moving forward, that wouldn't happen.
moving forward, when we adopt this policy, that will not be the case then.
Yeah.
So what's being proposed in amendments is that the time limit is 10 years rather than 60 years,
10 years post-mortem, Chair, was the consultation is through.
and the consultation is 21 days. So, Councillor Dart,
Just for clarification then, it's probably written in here, but I haven't read it. If you had a local plan. So one that sticks in my head is Pinkham Road over there. So I was thinking of the Pinkhams up at Channing, which is not really here. But anyway, so Pinkham Road, if the person who it was named after, a Pinkham, say, died over 10 years ago, then if we go with this, what about all the other family members that are Pinkhams that are still alive? If you've got Pinkhams still alive, are you therefore saying because you haven't put a Pinkham on the road name, that actually you can't name that road Pinkham something because you've got other Pinkhams everywhere? Living.
So Chair, I think we've just got right to the crux of why it's complicated when you name things after people in living memory. Because all of a sudden you get into, well, that's the person who still currently owns the site next door, and you've got all of this contention that goes with it. That time period, elapsation, is intended to wash some of this stuff through so that it becomes less contentious when that happens. Now, obviously, you're going to get occurrences like that. That does happen. I can think of a number of other places where things are named after people with very close association with that piece of land, and that's probably because the district council doesn't know of that association. Yeah, so I wouldn't know if Mr. Pinkham used to own that piece of land, because, well, why would I know that? Some of that comes out through local consultation with the parish councils, and you get that feedback because they would also be assessing against the criteria. But in the scheme of things, I suppose what we don't know, how can it harm you if you're putting best efforts to apply the policy, and it happens that there's a name association that was not known, you could readdress it.
Therefore, is there a caveat in there to say, you know, any association, persons living? Like the other one with those, yeah, what are those at the bottom now? For fear of upsetting. Presumably what the whole thing is about.
It is.
yes, Councillor.
Sorry, yeah, but I think
Just-
you're absolutely right. If we're getting into those sort of complications, I think it seems very British to have a rule which does seem a bit draconian, actually. And I would actually go against the 10-year rule because I think it would simplify things. It would get away from the discussion of rule already happened. And I think we should perhaps go back to, say, a 50-year rule, 60-year rule. I'd also question, if we're increasing the 21 days for parish councils, do we need to look at extending the consultation for applicants? Because obviously there's quite often conflict between the applicants and the parish councils on these matters. And if you're saying you've got 3 weeks to consult for applicants, you know, I think we need to be fair. Applicants only got 5 days, it seems a little bit hard on their side.
It's a consideration, Chair.
Right, well, I'm quite happy with the 21 days, and that to me makes sense. I haven't really got an opinion one way or the other, whether it's 10 years, 60 years or whatever. Hopefully I won't be around if Councillor Christie says they're going to name anything after me in the future, but so was it seconded? I believe it was. Okay, it's been proposed and seconded then, so with those two amendments, that it's 21 days and 10 years, been proposed by councillor Christie, seconded by councillor Gobb. All in favour, please show.
Thank you, Chair.
Against? And any abstentions?
That's 23 for and 5 against.
Thank you. Okay, well, like I said, didn't expect that one to take all that time. Item 11, to answer questions submitted under procedural rule A9, none have been submitted. Item 12, petitions, we don't have any petitions. And we have 4 notices of motion, one from councillor Lavelle, who is clearly not here tonight, so that will be deferred to the time when she does attend. The second one is from councillor Craigie.
Yeah, thank you. I will be deferring the notice of motion because obviously the leader and the person need to meet with the Secretary of State to find further information from them about how the allocation of funding will take place appropriately. I think that while we do know what the areas were selected on as part of the levelling up agenda, that they need to improve the quantity of people achieving qualifications level 3 and above, the improvement of longevity of life, the improvement of the earnings, average earnings in the area, and the gross value added of the economy. There is still not a clear system of how they are going to evaluate those in terms of how things are decided. And so we have to defer it until the next meeting, after which time we can have further clarity.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next one is councillor Wheatley.
I move the motion that council recognises huge importance of the mobile library service across the whole of the Torridge district. We request that Devon County Council rethink their decision to close the service across Devon and simply forward to replace the mobile library vans. We also ask Devon County Council to explore future opportunities of the mobile library service which will enhance lives for the rural communities. We are clearly seeing growing public support, including celebrities and authors, to keep our present mobile library service in place. Books are the foundation of education, and Torridge is one of the most deprived districts in the country. To help lift communities out of poverty, deprivation, isolation, and loneliness, we should be increasing access to books, not removing them. And we also propose that we have a recorded vote regarding this motion.
Thank you. So we did write to Devon County Council, I believe, a couple of meetings back on this subject. So I'm always suggesting that we write a further letter to Devon County Council with our objections.
Yes, Chair. It's just
Okay. Recorded vote's been called for, so. Sorry, councillor James.
I'm quite happy for a letter to go forward because the internal scrutiny has called for an investigation into it. So we could support that rather than just sending a blank letter again. There is a process going on at Devon County, so we can support that process.
And you're seconding that?
I'm quite happy to second it.
Okay, thank you. So in order for a recorded vote to take place, we need at least 5 members to actually support that. So clearly that's, you need the numbers, Tom?
no, that's fine.
Okay, so it's been proposed by councillor Wheatley, seconded by councillor James. Show of hands in support, please.
No, recorded vote.
Also, vote recorded vote. Yeah.
Yes.
Call it out then, please.
Councillor Andrews.
Councillor Andrews? Are you in support? Yes. It's a recorded vote, so you have to shout your name out.
Yes.
Councillor Back. Councillor Bright, Chris Bright, sorry. Councillor Lauren Bright. Councillor Bushby.
4.
Councillor Christie.
4.
Councillor Coulter Hunky.
4.
Councillor Craig. Brady, or councillor Dart, councillor Elliott,
Abstain.
councillor Gibson,
Abstain.
councillor Dodd,
Four.
councillor Hackett,
Four.
councillor Haynes,
Four.
councillor Harding,
Abstain.
councillor Hicks,
James.
councillor Hodgson,
Four.
councillor Inch,
Four.
councillor James,
Four.
councillor Johns,
Four.
councillor Leather,
Four.
councillor Locke,
Again, abstain, sorry.
abstain.
Yeah.
Councillor Piper, 4. Councillor Shepherd, 4. Councillor Smith, 4. Councillor Thomas, 4. Councillor Wheatley, 4. Councillor Whitaker.
Abstain.
Twenty-two for, 1 against and 5 abstentions.
Thank you, John. Motion is clearly carried. Thank you. Okay, the next one is councillor Cottle Hunkin.
So the next motion is Forest District Council declared a housing crisis back in 2021 and has since spent considerable time and energy looking at housing solutions on council-owned land. It is clear that only a very small number of sites will be able to provide some temporary accommodation, far short of what is needed to solve the housing crisis in Torridge. Therefore, this council puts out a request for landowners to come forward with land which might be suitable to be developed in the form of community land trusts. When such land is available and considered appropriate, this council will actively support local communities to bring forward their own local housing schemes. So I put something similar to this forward at the last council, and there seemed to be a lot of support for it, but I should bring it back to the motion, which is what I've done. There's a housing crisis in Torridge, and as a local authority, we rarely meet the 30% affordable housing target for housing developments in Torridge. We don't own enough suitable land to deliver our own housing, and therefore I believe it would be the best for our communities if we as a council enable parishes to create their own in the form of community land trust. So that's why I'm putting forward.
Councillor Brady.
I'd like to second this motion. I think it's very important that we do have community land trusts as part of our housing mix. They enable the communities to have an input and a say in how things are done, because we need not just affordable hands, we need social housing. And so I think it's very important that this goes ahead.
Councillor Haynes.
Yeah, I support this motion, and I'm not quite clear why the motion refers to temporary housing. My understanding was that we're going to be looking at sites for temporary and permanent housing on an affordable and social basis. But having said that, I support encouraging land trusts.
Well, we haven't even thought about having a 5-minute debate on this, but I mean, unless it's urgent, councillor Locke, are you going to add something?
I fully support the motion. Like the difficulty that the full council have is identifying the landowners, and I would suggest the first step that we should do is to write to individual parish councils and ask them to circulate to all their members, because they will be more aware of what land is available. So I think an initial letter should go out from Torridge with a request to all local councils so they can identify within their own parishes.
Good idea. Councillor Dart, and then I'm going to go to the vote.
Right, this is really crucial because within my ward, we've got a community land trust set up in Bradley, and it was no mean feat for the committee to actually keep that running and overcome major obstacles that came to fruition throughout the build. Rachel Webdale was with us at the time, and she enabled or helped enable a lot of build. And since that had been built out, Suckham and various other very small villages have wanted to develop their affordable housing, but proportionately, it's very, very small. The contribution is very, very small. Now, we don't have, as far as I'm aware yet, a replacement for Rachel Webdale. We did, and she left. So there is actually, whilst we may have land available, there is no support within Torridge. Furthermore, if you want to go through, or these community land trusts want to go in collaboration with Westwood or Wessex, what else is it, Wessex Land? Midwest. Yes, no, there are other enabling sectors or places that help in small properties in the middle of nowhere. So actually, to get anyone on board, if you set up your community land trust, big tick, well done, then what? There is no other party to help you build out or take on that property or a couple of properties at the moment. And there certainly isn't any line within Torridge by which our communities can use that, communicate through, and then enable the build out process. So there's a whole bigger picture here, Sharon, and I support your motion, but it's more than just bringing the land forward. There's a whole raft of obstacles in the way that really, are inhibiting this.
Let me just,
It needs to be really thought out and well.
let me just bring in the chief executive.
All right, thanks, Chair. Just to respond, Councillor Darty is absolutely right. That post is currently vacant and is supposed to be seeking to recruit to currently. So it is a post in the establishment that will be recruited to do this type of work.
But Steve, how long have you been trying to recruit that role?
I think you're right. It was a difficult role to recruit to, and the last time we appointed someone, they came with a different slant. This is clearly enabling work as we're talking about here, and I guess all we can do is go to the market and see who's out there. I've chased Helen this week. Now she's back off of leave because we need that job description. We want to try and tweak it from last time because I don't think we quite had the emphasis right last time. And we hope to be out with an advert as soon as possible. The money for the post is in the budget, which is to advertise it and find someone. If we don't find someone, I think, that there is an urgency associated. We're going to have a rethink on our strategy about how we do this enabling work, because it isn't just a COT piece of work, it's a whole wider piece of enabling that needs to be done.
Getting back, I'm sorry, Mr. James.
Yeah, could I just come in very briefly? I am a director of the CLT, quite a successful one, but there is an enormous amount of background work that needs to be done. There is two elements of encouragement. One is that we are advertising for a post and we're looking for the type of person that will be able to help with that. The second one is I sit on the Devon Housing Task Force, and there is quite a movement within Devon County and the LGA to move towards more support for community land trusts. And part of their thing is to try and bring more funding in specifically. For the last 3 years, the CLTs have been promised 60 million and none of it's materialised at all. So there is a lot of thought, and all I would suggest with this is that we accept the principle. We can, there's no reason we don't put it out to parish councils, but a word of warning, there is an awful lot of work involved and very short of money at this moment in time. But I'm quite happy to support the principle.
Okay, it's been proposed by Councillor Cotter-Hunkin and Councillor Craig has seconded it with those alterations that Councillor Locke suggested, that Torridge right to parish councils, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favour, please show. Any against? Any abstentions?
26, 4 and 2 against, Jim.